Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fellowship in Essential Oils. Today we dive into a really interesting essential oil that is gifted to us from a very generous plant, gifting us not only cistus that we've looked at before, but also another oil known as labdanum. And I'm really excited to talk to Liz and her experience about it today. And my first question for you, Liz, is what is the difference between cistus and labdanum? Because that does seem to be a confusing statement out there that people aren't too sure exactly which is which.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to say that as a good Wolverhampton Black Country girl, I say labdanum. So, so labdanum rather than labdanum. I don't know which is right, but I've always said that.
Hmm.
Um, the next point to clarify is that if you are using labdanum, the chances are it's not an essential oil, it is an absolute. Although there is an essential oil of labdanum, but it's rarely like seen on the marketplace. Um, and the plant actually gives a third really famous medicine, and that is the rock rose flower essence that you see in batch flower remedies. So the cistus rock rose has beautiful pink flowers that have like almost like black fingernails in each petal, and then the leaves are right almost they're very almost like a shrub, and they're quite not spiny, but they're rigid, and the leaves exude like a sap when it gets hot.
Mm.
So the hotter the temperature, the more that it makes, and the leaves become really, really sticky. And it's this exudate that is distilled or solvent extracted to make labdanum. And this has been collected since time immemorial. And it's just got this lovely, lovely story to it, which is still true today, that these cistus plants grow very, very big. And they are really resistant to the sun, so everybody kind of grows them in the hot countries because flowers don't need much water, and they're quite often put as like a hedging around fields. And what happens is goats really love the taste of them, so they go and nibble on them and they get absolutely covered in this sticky stuff in their beard. And so then what happens is the farmer uses a kind of what is called a rake. It's like this kind of leather sort of strapping with sort of several prongs, to comb it out. And that's how they collect the labdanum and then they extract it. And it's been done that. So it was written that even in Dioscorides describes it. So this is really, really ancient. And we know that it went to sort of Egypt, ancient Greece, all of these places have always really sort of revered labdanum, and particularly as a perfumery ingredient because it's got a very deep note. It's very sweet. I really like it. This bottle is so old, and actually, when I picked it up earlier, I was like, "Oh gosh, it's not even going to move. It's so thick." But just a few minutes in my warm hand, and it's gone fluid again. So you can see how the heat really makes. Obviously, that's why it comes out of the plant. But in perfumery, it has like this really deeply uh, sweet, like sort of balsamic, licoricey note. And it really reminds me of, I don't know whether other countries have this, but we used to have this really disgusting sweet when we were kids. If you had a cough called a fisherman's friend, and everybody, and it's like you think of old man with coffee, with like hacking cough. It's that kind of like sweet to get all the rubbish off your chest. Really smells like fisherman's friends, I think, but in a really, really nice way. And because it's very thick, it's very heavy. Not only does it have like a base note in perfumery, but it fixes the scent so that it doesn't like evaporate off so quickly. And so in perfumery, that's important. But in perfumery in hot countries, it's really, really important because, of course, the volatiles in sort of citrus notes just disappear like that because your skin gets hot really fast. So it was, we can see it in a lot of recipes for sort of Roman perfumes and things like that as a fixative. But also, we think it was probably used in temples and in religious practice because it has a very similar fragrance to something that is protected now. So if you look in the Bible and you see the royal incenses, sorry, the holy incenses, there's an ingredient in there called onycha, which is a mollusk. And when it's crushed down, it has this lovely rich fragrance to it. But it's quite a rare mollusk, and for a long time it's been like, no, we don't use that. We don't also use ambergris. So again, it kind of takes the place of ambergris because that's like a secretion that the spermeti makes. So it takes the place of two really fundamental perfumery ingredients. And so you see it a lot in expensive perfumery right through time. And if you look at sort of writings by P.S., who was like a really famous perfumer in the 19th century, he kind of doesn't have anything different to say that. He just says this like this really ancient smell, mystical smell that really takes him back through time. And I would agree with that entirely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So just to get really clear, in modern day aromatherapy, the labdanum absolute, is that a solvent extracted from the leaf, or do they actually take the gum off the leaf first?
The gum.
The gum. Okay, got you. And so
Yeah,
then
we call
sisters,
it.
what is our sister's essential oil from that plant?
Oh, the flower.
The flower. Okay, got you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just in like the most simple vision of like the plant would be, you have the silvery leaves underneath, and then this pretty pink flower with these like fingernails. And I think it's fascinating, fingernails, because that's exactly what the onycha uh, um, mollusk looks like as well. It's like a fingernail. And then so sisters, they take the top off, use the petals, and labdanum, it's the sticky stuff that comes off the plant.
Gotcha, got you. Now, I've been smelling mine, and I would say it reminds me of like a dark and mystical kind of new age shop or spiritual shop and that type of thing. And you've talked about how it's been really popular in perfumery. Does it have any physical healing attributes that you might use it for?
Yeah, it's really good for skin, and particularly older skin. So it's always been used for sort of really deep set wrinkles and sort of sun damage.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a trial done in 2022 that wanted to measure exactly how good it was. And they proved that it inhibited elastase by 22%, and it inhibited nitric oxide by 98%. So nitric oxide has many properties in the body, but in the skin, it definitely works like a free radical. And elastase, its job is to inhibit elastin. So elastin is what is almost, it like comprises collagen, so it makes your skin look taut. So elastase is part of the aging process that makes your skin go wrinkly. So it actually slows that down by 22%. So immediately you have like this protective mechanism against wrinkles. It is a heavy oil, so it's not something that you would want to really be using as a younger person. It definitely is an older person's oil. And quite often you'll see it's written that it was used in mummification. I don't think we've ever found any evidence of that, any physical evidence, but I can really see how somebody got there because of this skin preservation that you would need in mummification. So maybe it was. One of my favorite sort of stories about ancient Egypt, there was an Egyptologist in the 1920s called Percy Newbery, who said he thought that, you know, when you see the pictures of Tutankhamun and he's got his arms crossed, he's got like a flail in that
The
hand.
hook and the flail. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, he thinks that flail is one of these rakes for the Labdanum. And the reason why he says that is he thinks, and lots of people have asserted this, that maybe, although the one's never been found, this beard that they used to wear, this pharaonic beard, may have been made from goat's hair, because never found any. So either it was like a natural product or it's been melted down because it was gold. But that it would naturally smell of this Labdanum, and so it became part of their ritual pharaonic thing. And so he says he's looked at all of like the agricultural stuff of the time. None of them make sense with this flail, that it doesn't look strong enough, but it looks really similar to the Labdanum rake that the farmers use. So I thought that was really fascinating. So that diverged a little bit off the physical properties, but this idea of preserving the skin is really important. It's got quite an interesting chemistry. There's lots of sort of diterpenes, there's labradonic acids, viridifluorol, caryophyllene derivatives, but about 30%, sometimes nearly as much as 40% of the oil is alpha-pinene. And alpha-pinene is absolutely fantastic. If you remember, this is one of my favourite constituents for repairing cartilage in the body. So for people who have things like osteoarthritis, where the cartilage is breaking down, then that is really good. So any kind of problems where there's really deep pain in the body, like rheumatism, arthritis, because it's very slowing, it's very sedative, very masculine, makes really good treatment as part of an essential oil blend for massage. It wouldn't be one that you would use on its own, but it's really soothing and sedative and really knocks you out. It does have some mild antimicrobial properties, but the skincare side is definitely the aspect. And so even if somebody's got sort of itchy, flaky skin from eczema and it's breaking down, and you wanted to restore the integrity of the skin barrier, then Labdanum is really good. So things like psoriasis, because it softens it, dermatitis, all of those things respond really well to Labdanum.
Amazing. Now, I love what you're saying about how it's quite grounding. I find this oil to be both kind of grounding, but also it's a spiritual oil. And although it's very, very different in so many ways to sandalwood, it kind of would maybe sit in the same box as sandalwood. So I find this one's a really great oil to work with when we're going through some transformation in our lives. When we're, it's time to go to the next chapter. We're moving somewhere, new job, new relationship, new home, something like that type of thing. And there's two things we kind of look at or what we're seeking for at this time. We need to stay grounded in this, but because we're kind of going into a new environment or a new situation, we also need to call on those skills of, following our intuition, getting guidance and being connected spiritually as well. And this is where I'd really love to lean into Labdanum. I love the idea of using it in skincare. I'd love to really massage it into the third eye chakra to just kind of settle the mind so that those spiritual kind of skills can come through and we can connect with that and be guided by that rather than be overwhelmed by something that is coming that might throw us off, because we have to basically be prepared to expect the unexpected.
I think that's all really good. Yeah, I agree entirely. I think it's become kind of a bit of a strange thing these days that it's almost like we talk about spiritual practice, and grounding is the opposite. Grounding's when we come back down.
Yeah,
But
true.
that's very much like a 21st century way of seeing spiritual practice. So, for example, if you were in ancient Greece or if you were in ancient Egypt, there would be those mysteries to do with elevation, but also there's the chthonic mysteries that are to do with the earth and the things that happen below the earth, the burial rituals, those to do with life and death. So it definitely has this kind of chthonic effect. So to do with the idea that there is something after. You talked about transition. This is about transition between death and what comes next. So those people that are doing Mary Magdalene work, for example, in soul midwifery work, or who work with Dionysus, who work with Isis, all of those things where there's the idea that, okay, the body dies, but that's the sheath that dies and something else eternal is happening, then that, it's very much that kind of work. But there's even just in like everyday life, there's a chthonic aspect to their religion. So for example, Demeter is a chthonic goddess in ancient Greece because she's to do with agriculture and what goes on beneath the soil. And so any kind of work that's to do with earthwork, to do with ley lines, to do with making the invisible visible, can be really good work with Labdanum. And because it's really slow, you don't go out your head. You stay absolutely present in the work that you're doing, and it's very good at shifting your gaze from the ordinary to non-ordinary reality.
Yep, I think that presence would be probably a key word that you could use for Labdanum. Is that real? It keeps you present as you navigate through whatever that may be. I also love how you were saying that that spirituality isn't always about going higher or lifting off kind of thing, because especially for individuals like ourselves and those that are listening and watching, they're going to find magic not just up there, but in the earth and around the earth and all around them. So I think this is a really powerful tool to maybe help us connect with that. Yeah, would this be an angelic oil? Definitely not,
No,
kind of thing. But
absolutely not.
more connected with the magic upon this planet rather than the magic of the heavens. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. And I'm perhaps going a little bit off tangent of the oil, but I think it's really worth saying this, that in modern parlance, we talk about ascension, we talk about transcendental, we talk about, like, especially with now ChatGPT is writing so much stuff out there. That's the way that ChatGPT talks, and it suggests that we're going higher and higher and higher and higher. But actually, when you're doing sort of mystical work and spiritual work, actually you're not going up, you're going further and further inwards. Always inwards, so almost like taking away the Russian doll. So it definitely is that kind of work. If you're meditating to kind of go, oh, I'm going to ascend, the ascension is becoming more and more yourself, taking away all of those sort of past lives and all of the stuff, parental conditioning and stuff. So it is ascension, but it's not that way, it's that way. Yeah.
It's incension, not ascension. I'm just making up words now.
But yeah, I like that incense, because it's like incense really makes sense to me, that you're going inwards, always further and further inwards. And that's not always a good thing. I mean, I proved that when I was doing the Melissa work. You can go further, you can go way, way, way too far, and it just be too far, and you're smacked out of real life. I think that Labdanum's very good at going do the process, but you don't have to go that far inwards. We can just shift the vision a bit.
So do you think someone who is maybe feeling a bit depressed or is really kind of caught in their own gloom or grief at a certain point in time, maybe spiritually this may not be a good oil to work with? Or do you think it could still assist in some way?
I think it's very calming. I think it's very good. So it depends on the grief. So grief is an enormous picture in its own right. So if somebody has nursed, so this is a good example. I've just spent a year nursing somebody with cancer, and at times that's traumatic, right? If you're left with the trauma of that grief, that's whether somebody's recovered or not recovered, and there's trauma left, then absolutely that's what this plant does, right? That's absolutely cistus, rock rose, labdanum, that's what that's about. But if it's just like I feel gloomy and I feel sad, and actually I just really want to be over this and I just want to get out of the gloom, then no, this makes you sit there, you know. So you would be better using things like rose and the more traditional sort of prescription. That's a terrible word. It breaks down every FDA law, but those kind of prescription ones of like for grief, you would use um, rose, or you want to uplift somebody and say, monarda or yuzu or bergamot. Depends what you're trying to do with that grief. But certainly, if somebody is traumatized in their grief, then yeah.
So what chakra do you think this one would resonate with?
I think it's crown chakra.
Okay, yeah. I tend to, find I place it more in the third eye just because of it. I find it kind of settles the mind a little bit in that intellect aspect of the third eye chakra, but at the same time opens up the intuition. So it kind of balances, a lot of people when they think of the third eye chakra, they focus on that intuition side. I've always found it's about how we interpret and understand the world. So we take all the stimuli from our five senses. We use our intellect, we use our intuition, and we work out what does this all mean and how do I navigate my way through it. And I find Labdanum has that ability to settle the mind, but also open the gates so that the information can come in, but we know what to do with it. So I feel it really powerful for the third eye chakra.
I think that's very astute. I think something I've been thinking about a lot lately is how in the last sort of 20 years everybody suddenly goes, oh, I know what the chakras do. And it's like, if you just said that sort of 30 years ago, people would have gone, sorry, the what? Oh, no, that makes no sense at all. But now I think everybody kind of recognizes what a chakra is, how it's related to the glands, how it's affected by hormones, for example. I think that's understood. I think what's getting lost in that discussion is first of all, how the aura comes involved in that, but also how the chakras speak to one another. So, for example, somebody can walk around with their heart chakra wide open. Well, the chances are that their root chakra is really going to become diminished. Or if they have got really weak energy at the root chakra, then it's really difficult for the energy to come up, for the kundalini to rise, to be able to nourish those. I do think that the third eye has got, or let's use a different word. The brow chakra has two functions, and the first is about thought, right? So but then there is also the third eye chakra, a chakra which is mystical. And if you are working with this on its own, potentially it's only the brow chakra. Unless you involve the higher level of wanting consciousness to open, I think that's what makes it the third eye chakra. So I think that the two together is probably more accurate than what I said on its own. But I do think that it has a really good way of being able to collect up scattered parts of yourself. And so that might be a karmic thing of over many lifetimes. You've got sort of this karmic pathway, but also in terms of when we talked about trauma, I can remember going through two specific traumas in my life, and I felt like my etheric bodies had gone boom, and everything was just like I was like the scared cat. And it was like I feel like I've lost a part of me through this awful thing that's happened. And Labdanum is very much the kind of medicine that goes, oh, I know where to go and get that. And if you think about it, that is exactly the story of Isis, that she knows how to collect up the parts of Osiris. So then that becomes a death mystery again.
To kind of go off in a slight tangent, but based on what you just said then, this is native to parts of Europe, isn't it, this plant? Yeah. The lower, more the warmer climates? More southern Europe?
Yeah, it's Mediterranean. Syria, places like that. So sort of Middle East as well is where obviously the hotter it is, the better yield of exudate you have.
Yeah.
It grows perfectly well in my garden. It grows like a really big bush, and if you walked past it, you'd go, "Ugh, I'm sticky." But you wouldn't actually be able to go, "Oh, so there's exudate I could take off here." That's not. But I would say in the Middle East, sort of Dubai, places like that, Iran, Iraq, yeah, it's absolutely streaming out of the bush.
Now, I find, when it comes to astrology, this one for me, because of that grounding nature, but also it it really does. I think it's really great for people maybe that even get a bit distracted. I associate this with the planet of Saturn. What about
Yeah,
yourself?
yeah, I can see that. I think that's a really good. Um, yeah, it's very slowing. It keeps you in the here and now. That's very much Saturn. You will sit there. You will do the work. For me, I would have probably put it more Pluto, but when I think about it, Pluto probably doesn't make that much sense because then you'd have to have a sexual aspect, and I suppose it's kind of nice in an aphrodisiac land, but I wouldn't have said it was aphrodisiac in its own right. So probably Saturn's a better call, actually. Yeah.
Now, as we're getting to our final 10 oils that we're exploring in this season of Fellowship in Essential Oils, I've been asking the question, does everyone need it? And I think as we're getting to these last few, probably not. So I'm going to rephrase the question. Who needs labdanum?
Well, I actually think if you are interested in essential oils and you want a diversity of oils, this is one to look at. It's got such a fascinating fragrance. You will add an interesting dynamic to any of your blends by using that. So whilst it doesn't have that many like physical properties, you'll find that your practice is transformed by this because you go, "Oh wow, that really everything smells different with that in." But I think it is a spiritual seeker's oil. I definitely think that it's an old hag's oil who goes, "Oh my God, look at my skin." Yeah, if it's starting to dry out and if you're starting to see lines, get it. Definitely get it. Again, if you've got very dry skin, particularly eczema, psoriasis, and your skin is like really, really breaking, it's great. It's a great one to nourish the skin and try and slow that down.
Yeah, well, amazing. Well, I think, and like I've got my one bottle, but I haven't really used it that much, to be honest with you, type of thing. Is it an oil that you find is readily available, or do you find that you've got to do a bit of a search to get it? I find it a lot in
Easy to
blends.
find. I think it's easy to find.
Okay, yeah. Oh, well, interesting. Well, we want to hear what you, the listener and the viewer, have you got Labdanum? Has there been something that's resonated in what we've said today that you thought you did track that one down? Or if you'd ever heard of it as well. But if you do have a use for it, whether it be for the body, for the emotions, for the mind, or for the spirit, please share those uses so our whole community can definitely learn and we can all learn from each other's experience. Of course, in that essence, make sure that you always like our videos and subscribe to them and share them to someone who maybe even might be a bit of a essential oil connoisseur, and you might open up a brand new conversation like, have you heard of Labdanum before? Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But we'll be back next week to give you more fascinating content to share as well. Until then, take care and blessed be.
Bye bye.